Hello, willkommen bei München. Welcome, everyone. It's May, and we are regretting the fact that Ryan couldn't join Ariel and I in Munich this year. Somehow, Ariel and I ended up with plane tickets, and we had to use them. So, sorry, Ryan. My apologies.
No worries. It looks like it's very cold there because the people aren't moving.
It is a little on the spring fresh chilly side, but with a good leader, we're ready to go.
Very good.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us this episode. I'm Brent Heffley. I'm the sales and marketing director for Ayre Acoustics. With me here, as always, is Ariel Brown, our VP and senior engineer, and Ryan Berry, our CEO and expert technician. First, let's get to the Biergarten stuff. What have you got in your glasses there today?
So it's another old school Colorado brewery that I'm not even sure how long they've been around. I think they've been around longer than I've been in Colorado. Because I remember going down to Tivoli. So this is Tivoli Brewing, Denver, Colorado.
And your can's visible. Wow, that's amazing.
In downtown Denver. I remember going down there, I think even before I was of legal drinking age, and going down to some of the bars down there, and but I don't remember them distinctly. But so they've got a few German style beers we have. So I got the Hefeweizen. Ryan has the Helles Lager.
Ooh, nice. That sounds tasty for a spring day. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Got to go with the theme. Got to go with the theme. I ran across this German style Pilsner from Von Ebert Brewing in Portland the other day, and I picked it out specifically for this episode because you got to, right? It's the first time I've had any of their beers. It's really nice. It's a pretty authentic Pils. I think it's got good color, nice and light, perfect for a spring afternoon.
Yeah, so needless to say, we're all going through withdrawals of not getting to visit Germany for all of last year. And now it doesn't look like this year is going to be happening either. So, it's a real shame for everybody. And, it's nice that we get to do these at least to still get to talk a little bit, though we all miss the shows quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone that we usually see there, hey, see you next year at this time, hopefully. They've got it scheduled. So that's good. All right, so today we're gonna back up a little bit. We've dove into some pretty technical topics here. We're gonna kind of step back and just take a look at, how we do our line, because we've got a few different lines of products within Ayre, and we get the question pretty often, and especially when we go to shows, what's the difference? Like, what makes the 8 series and 8 series product? What makes the 5 series better? And why do you charge that much for the R series? Because when you look on, a lot of the basic specs that we do, the specs don't really tell much difference between the lines. There are some things, but not everything. So, Ariel, do you want to start out and just kind of talk about what, maybe what makes the 8 series an 8 series product, like where we start? Because for us, that's kind of base level, but it's not base level for all the electronics that are out there, right? Like,
yeah, well, let me be a bit more general first. And so, the big things are going to be parts quality, circuit complexity, maybe circuit topology, but usually not. It's usually circuit complexity, chassis materials, even display technologies, and what was the last thing I was thinking of? And in the case of power amplifiers, often power rating will also be a difference between lines. So that's kind of the big overview of some of the basic differences. Now we can dig into some of the specifics a bit. Right. So we want to talk about 8 series. So it's easiest to compare the lines. So on the 8 series, let's say, compared to 5 series. And so some of the circuit topology is a bit simplified in the 8 series compared to the 5 series, where if it's the same basic amplifier and buffer technologies, but and even in the power supplies, for instance, one specific is the we do use a lot of current sources, both in power supplies and in the amplifier circuits, and so we use a more complex and current source in our higher range products and a simpler current source in our lower range products. That's one specific. So then another difference is going to be the parts quality. So the specific resistors and the specific capacitors, particularly, those are really the two main components that that's really easy to either upgrade or downgrade within a circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the 5 series, we use an audio specific PRP through hole resistor. In the 8 series, we use a bit more generic surface mount MELF style resistor. It's still a fantastic resistor for the money. It's really hard to beat, but it is far more affordable, and it's also cheaper assembly to put on because it's surface mount.
Right.
And again, capacitors. The 5 series is going to have more. At least some of product, depending which product, will have more rail cap polystyrene capacitors, and as well as several WEMA polypropylene film or metallized capacitors. Whereas 8 series, we go to some more surface mount PPS capacitors, as well as some WEMAs as well. But it's just a different mix. And again, just for that price point, we have to pick, budget friendly parts.
Sure. That makes sense. So now, when we're talking about that, we're talking about going to higher grade parts, and we're also talking about better current sources. What are the sonic differences that somebody could expect, that hasn't really listened to the line before that comes out? Like, what's that current source going to do sonically for somebody that's looking at buying one of the products?
Yeah, I'll point out real quick, and I'll let Ryan expand on that a little bit, because I know that, particularly, when we developed the 8 series, and we were trying to figure out how to simplify the circuit, and that was one of the big things we did, was simplifying the current source. And so, what I heard is that it's with more complex current source, I would say the sound is more refined, a bit more clarity. With the simpler one, honestly, it's a bit more fun and engaging almost. Would you agree, Ryan?
In some ways. I mean, it's hard to say, well, what's bad about anything, especially when you're talking like, you're almost at the point of splitting hairs with some of our designs, just because there's a lot of care in all of them. Sometimes I wish we were a company that would just throw parts on a board and make it work and call it a day, but that's just not who we are. We spend the hundreds of hours per unit, per design, making sure that it's just right, delaying things months at times. And, we've had times where we were getting close to development cycles being done and said, well, let's just start over on all this because we don't like these things about it. And then, it sets the whole thing back on its ear a little bit. But so, it's hard to say, well, it's not as refined in the sense of, it makes it sound like the 8 series is just, muddy, but that's just not the case.
No, it's not.
Everything we do is really, really clear. I will say that for me, the 5 series and the R series, particularly with the KXR, I get more of that sense of being there. So, I enjoy listening to the music on an 8 series. It's more like how I would expect a reproduction to be when I'm playing with the sliders on my car stereo or whatever. You can kind of tweak up the bass, and it's fun sounding, and it's enjoyable. And there's elements of that the EX8 has, and makes it, like you said, a fun amplifier to listen to.
You're really engaging, really sucks you in.
Yeah. When I get into the 5 series, it's not that it's dry or boring. It's actually, it makes you stop and examine the music more. It's like, oh, I've never heard that sound before, and you realize it's the drummer setting down the sticks on a set of drums in his Stravinsky track before he goes over to pick up the bass drum sticks over there, and it's this background subtle quiet noise, and just because you have this dead black background going on, these black dark silences, you start listening and hearing those little intricacies that you've never heard before. And that's kind of the differences for me. You know, it's I enjoy listening to the X8. It's my main system at home that I listen to probably 3/4 of the time. But when I want to do that serious listening, there's something about that 5 series, and then of course the R series beyond that is just the next level.
Nice. So, oh, go ahead, Ariel.
Well, yes, I mean, you know, again, just as I'm remembering more and more differences between our lines. So again, like things like the circuit board material changes. Well, at least going up to the R series, it definitely changes. We use a really expensive, high speed, there's actually board material, I believe, designed more for RF circuits, which is not the way we use it, but it definitely affects the sound quality.
Right. So, yeah, do you want to just take that lead and when we go from 5 series to R series, like what happens? As far as R series, again, as far as the power amplifier, the power rating goes up. And so we use beefier transistors. Again, for the R series, when we originally designed it, we used really special surface mount resistors that were really hard to get. We used special board material. We used the best film capacitors we could get, and we went to a crazy monocoque solid billet chassis design, which isn't just jewelry. It does affect the performance also because it's a solid billet. It's far stiffer. The way it damps vibrations is very different than just a bent aluminum or steel chassis. And so it is a much more solid foundation for the circuit, which are especially when we're talking about most capacitors, are actually slightly microphonic. There is that kind of feedback path back from the actual acoustic vibrations in the room through the chassis to the circuit board to those components. That is a form of feedback mechanism. So, right,
even that chassis has a drastic effect on that loop.
That's probably one of the things that surprised me most in high-end audio is how much that chassis design really makes a difference. You go to a really thin piece of metal and it sounds like it. You can. It's the best way I can describe it. It sounds like what it's either sitting on or what it's made out of, and the feet and wood blocks and all those things all kind of play into that. But that chassis design, like that thickness of the aluminum, actually has a huge role in that. And it's between that and just how much of that aluminum gives it a little bit more of a steady heat sink factor on the amplifiers, where you drive them a little bit harder temporarily, it has more mass to kind of absorb into, and that all kind of plays together. And it was really a surprising thing for me, because I was like, yeah, okay, chassis, how much of a difference does it really make? And it's
Sure.
sonically it is. It's a big player.
Yeah, which is, you don't really necessarily know if you're listening to products with similar chassis material, right? But when you make that big jump to that monocoque solid billet aluminum chassis, like that's a huge step, and you really can hear a pretty
well,
big
even
difference.
Going down, you look at like the AX5. I mean, it's always tempting, especially with the EX8s. When we're looking at making budget prices, could we take a stamped steel sheet and put on the back? They're really easy to deal with. They're thin, they get punched out, they can mass produce them for pennies compared to aluminum. And with all the paint, and then having to hand do everything on there and engrave all this stuff, and the draw is there from a financial aspect and from a cost of goods aspect, but then it makes such a big difference on how badly it makes the unit sound compared to what it could be, that it makes it just a no fly for us.
Right. Right. Now there's other things on specific pieces that we get to do when we go up in series. For example, the QX8 has one transformer, right?
Yep.
QX5 has three transformers.
Four.
Four
Yeah.
transformers.
Yep. Has three on the board transformers and one analog
chassis,
dedicated transformer.
Yeah. So I mean that makes a big difference too in the sonic characteristic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you get more isolation between these power supply domains and circuit domains. So yeah, thinking of more and more things as we keep talking about this, even like volume controls. And so again, like the 5 series and the R series, again, have very similar mechanical rotary switch Schalco volume controls. One difference there again is circuit board material and the resistors used.
And then
kind of like 7 series, we on the 7 series, we used we had a again a pretty discrete but solid state step attenuator essentially. And then down in the 8 now we have a far more traditional and budget friendly carbon potentiometer.
Right. Right. Now there's sound differences we've talked about between these, but I had somebody ask me recently, like, is there a lifespan difference as well? When you go up in quality of parts in resistors or capacitors, or is that kind of just, it's going to be about the same, and it's more of a sonic issue?
I mean, there's little differences between everything, of course. Like the trim or the volume controls in particularly is one that kind of pops into my mind, a mechanical versus a non-mechanical. I mean, they're all mechanical, but the Schalcos, for example, are a lot of moving parts. So there's a little bit more risk there. So actually, with a higher series, there's a little bit more of a risk, but at the same time, we also know it's the closest thing to having somebody sit inside your unit and change the resistors in and out whenever you want to change the volume. So it's one of those costs to performance, of course. But most of the parts, not really. I mean, Ariel and Charlie have always been fantastic at making sure that we're not overdriving parts and having them well within their safety margins. And we have units come back that, like the V1 and the K3 and products that are 25, 26, 27 years old at this point in time, and they're still clicking along like champions. And they come back for an update, or there's one little part that might have a problem on it that we need to replace, or it got dropped somewhere, and it doesn't really change much between the products for that reason. We don't ever want to have something in any of our products that we know is a weak spot if we can avoid it. So longevity, all these products are designed to last you forever. So that's the idea, is that you can keep it and have it until, from the beginning, that when you bought it, until the day you don't need it anymore. And that's it's really important for us.
Yeah. And so I also want to point out like a few things that that really are kind of mainstays throughout the line. So things like non-magnetic chassis materials that is shared up and down our line. As far as our circuit philosophies, as far as zero feedback, balanced, DC coupled, that's shared up and down our line. That is not something that we change.
Yeah, I mean, those are things we can implement without a direct cost associated with it. So we're able to do that more or less through the lines.
Yeah, well, there are direct costs to that because in the lower lines we certainly could save money by using either single-ended or even using a simpler circuit and then using feedback. There are definitely cost savings there. And so there is a cost to actually sticking to our philosophy, even in our cheapest products. They're not really cheap, but
right.
More affordable products.
Relative.
Yeah.
I mean, even the codecs, you look at the codecs, and it's the entry, the closest thing we have to an entry level product, and even in that product, there's 2 transformers, one that drives the digital domain, one that drives the analog domain. There's fully balanced circuitry from end to end. So, you go in and you have a negative phase and a positive phase handled from point A to point B inside of the unit. And, we have our probably biggest weakness is we always want it to be as good as we can make it. So it's sometimes hard where we start out with a goal of, hey, we're going to make this product for $2,000, and by the time we're done, it's like, oh, we just designed a $5,000 product, because we always want to have all those little things inside of it, and we know how important they are and how much they make the difference. So it's definitely the hardest thing for us to do is design something and exclude technology we know about.
Right. Well, maybe if we start doing that, we could afford a plane ticket for you next year to Munich too, and then we could
There you go.
all three of us could be there.
Yeah, and then I can have very frozen people behind me.
Yeah, so another example, the differences between the lines is going to be power supply regulators. So again, particularly on the digital side, like in our DACs and such, and so in the lower line products, we usually just use an off-the-shelf, high quality IC regulator. But then as we go up to like the 5 series, especially where we then do our own discrete, ultra low noise, zero feedback, discrete, like I said, discrete regulator designs.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. So I think that's a nice overview without getting like crazy technically into it. But like, 8 series, 5 series, right? And then R series, we go, just about doubles in price from 8 series to 5 series. Then 5 series to R series is double to triple, because that's kind of what it needs to be to really reach that difference level.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, this is the cost of goods, and everybody always wonders, well, why does high end cost so much? And
right,
comes down to it, it's a lot of, this part's best. You're a small business, so you're not ordering millions of these things from some company overseas and whatnot. So you pay the prices to get what sounds the best, and you're working with other companies that are very specialized in what they do as well. So kind of all cascades, unfortunately, and leads to the prices that they are. But that's how you get what sounds best to you.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, well, if you're watching this, you want to know more about the product lines, just go to Ayre.com. Obviously, we've got them all there. We've got some descriptions on the main product series pages of what those series are about. You can take a look at that, or you can email us at pints@ayre.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you and answer those questions. So until next time, Prost.
Prost.
And Auf Wiedersehen.